My name is Morgan Locke,
My name is Carolyn Monroe.
and we're with Community Action to Promote Healthy Environments.
Let's get started. In this video, we will be presenting Part 1B of the Air Quality Monitoring Workshop, looking at air quality in Detroit. This slide shows all of the partners who are members of the Community Action to Promote Healthy Environments Partnership. This workshop was developed by CAPHE for people working to promote clean air in their communities through the use of improved air quality monitoring. Our goal is to teach you to use available data to inform work to promote clean air and improved health. Here's the agenda for this video. In Part 1A, we introduced the concept of air quality monitoring, talked about some common air pollutants, and explained their health effects. In Part 1B, we will talk about how air quality is experienced in Detroit, how it is measured and reported, and we'll leave you with the link to a demo for AirNow.Gov, where you can explore air quality in your area. At a later date, in Part 2 of this workshop, we will go into more detail about what air quality monitoring networks are, how they measure important pollutants, and air quality monitoring websites where you can learn to get the best data for your area. So who's most affected around us? In Wayne County, in the Detroit area, as in most of the rest of the country, about 7% of deaths are associated with high particulate matter concentrations, ozone, and some of the air toxics we talked about. In 2023, the most recent year for which data are available, that works out to 1,316 of the total 18,023 deaths in Wayne County. Air pollution doesn't affect everyone equally. I'm going to introduce two terms that we use to talk about differential effects. Vulnerability means that some groups of people are more likely to be exposed to higher levels of air pollution than others. There is substantial evidence showing that communities are more vulnerable to air pollution exposure when a large proportion of residents have low or limited incomes and large proportions of racially marginalized people. This means the 39% of residents living below the poverty line and the 85% Black and 7% Latino residents in Detroit are more likely to be exposed to higher levels of air pollution than their counterparts in the state as a whole. Another term that we use to talk about the idea that some groups are more likely to be harmed by air pollutants is susceptibility. Some groups of people are more susceptible to the adverse health impacts of air pollutants than others. This means that at any given level of air pollution, their health is likely to be more severely affected. For example, young children are more likely to experience more severe respiratory effects from exposure to air pollution compared to healthy adults. Asthma prevalence among children in Detroit is 15.7%, and the rate of hospital stays and deaths are double and triple the overall state rates. Similarly, the health of elders over the age of about 65 and those who already have health conditions such as heart disease or respiratory issues are likely to be affected more severely than the healthy adults when air quality is poor. Because families with young children, those with disabilities, and elders are more likely to have limited incomes, this means that many people who are susceptible to more adverse health impacts of pollutants also live in areas where they are more vulnerable to being exposed to those pollutants. They are exposed to multiple sources of pollution, point, area, and mobile, which we will discuss later. These groups are also more likely to work in the trades and thus have increased exposure through working in conditions that have increased air pollution. So wrapping up, the key point here is that air pollution doesn't affect everyone equally. Again, substantial research shows communities are more vulnerable to air pollution exposure when a large proportion of residents have lower limited incomes and large proportions of racially marginalized people or skilled workers. Because families with young children, those with disabilities, and elders are more likely to have limited incomes, this means the same people who are most susceptible to more harmful health impacts of pollutants also live in areas where they are more vulnerable to being exposed to those pollutants. In addition, many are exposed to multiple point, area, and mobile pollution sources.
In the next section, we will talk about where pollution comes from. We'll use the term emission sources. How can we get to the heart of this issue and start making observations about where certain pollutants are coming from?
There are many sources of pollution. In a place like Detroit, we have a mix of industry, we have a lot of traffic, and we have a lot of diesel exhaust. Those are some of the sources of air pollution. These are often sorted into different types. First are point sources, things like industry and smokestacks, like in photo 1. These are non-movable sources. They are stationary. Second are mobile sources. On road mobile sources, such as the cars, trucks, and buses in Photo 2, and off road sources, which include things like equipment being operated for construction, like in Photo 3. Point sources and on road sources typically dominate the local air pollution picture, and they're most important. Off road sources are also really substantial sources. Third, there are area sources. These are mainly construction sites.
Fourth are what are called event sources, meaning that the emissions come from specific, often unanticipated events. These include things like forest fires, burning buildings, or explosions, which can be close by or distant. A fifth type of air pollution source is called regional sources. These are air masses that are already polluted and move into the Detroit area. And so we may get, for example, from the Ohio River Valley, coal combustion aerosols drifting into our area and becoming part of what we call background levels. Finally, there are secondary sources. These pollutants include things like ground level ozone that are not directly emitted locally, are formed from other emissions like nitrogen dioxide and volatile organic compounds, or VOCs. They may take hours to days to form and build up through atmospheric chemistry. So while we have no ozone sources locally, we do have emissions of nitrogen dioxide, VOCs, and other pollutants that react to create ozone. So this is how we classify emission sources. In addition to sources closer to home, like point or area sources, we have event sources, which can be local or distant. There are also secondary sources, which come from the atmosphere. Lastly, regional sources can come from places like Chicago or other areas of the Midwest into the Detroit area. Monitoring for air pollution can be done on different scales, from what is called hyperlocal to global. The terms hyperlocal, local, urban, regional, continental, and global are used to explain the scale of air pollution events and to help monitor them. The map on the left of this slide shows the sulfur dioxide concentrations, also known as SO2, coming from different power plants around Zug Island. These plants are considered hyperlocal sources of air pollution that are being monitored within 100 meters of the source. The lines are called isoplasts, or lines of increased SO2, based on modeling predictions used in a permit application by the state a couple years ago. This would be an example of a local effect because it was in a few hundred meters. In the middle is a picture of smoke moving east from a wildfire that happened in Canada. The pollution from the wildfire is affecting the air quality in Detroit, even though the source is far away. Due to the scale and the movement of wildfire smoke from one region to another, this is considered a regional event. I think we all remembered a few years ago when this happened. Most cases of ozone and particulate matter pollution are considered regional events. The photo on the right is a picture of the ozone hole from 1994. If you click on the link in the description box, you can watch a video of the ozone hole increasing from the 1970s to the largest point in 1994. After EPA restricted the use of CFCs and some other chemicals, this hole started to recede. Why is this important? Because in order to fix issues caused by air pollution, we need to know where it comes from. In this video, we will mainly focus on air pollution on the hyperlocal, local, and urban scale. So, to wrap up, we talked about where air pollution comes from and the scale of air pollution. Because Detroit has so many sources of pollution, it can be important and useful to learn how to monitor outdoor air quality. And to summarize, point sources like smokestacks and on road sources like cars typically dominate the local air pollution picture, and they're the most important. Off road sources, like equipment being used for construction, are also really substantial sources. Understanding the concepts of emission sources and the scale of air pollution can help us monitor pollutants and protect health. To finish up, we'll answer the question: how is air pollution measured?
This is our last section. We will talk about how air monitors capture and report air pollution so we can understand what we are seeing when we look at levels of a pollutant. Monitors measure pollutants by their concentration in the air, which is the amount of the substance present. To explain concentration, we will use the metaphor of coffee with cream. Just like coffee, pollutants in the air can be diluted. The concentrations can go from low to high. If you dilute something, the concentration of whatever is in it becomes lower. So if you dilute coffee with cream or milk, the concentration of coffee is lowered. And that's exactly what happens for air emissions going into space. They mix rapidly in the environment, and the concentration diminishes. Every time there's an emission, though, it increases pollutant concentration levels, like adding coffee to the cup without adding additional cream. The concentration increases and dilution can't keep up. We need to work on decreasing concentrations of air pollutants, not just relying on the environment to dilute them. For particulate matter, this is reported on the maps we will see as micrograms per cubic meter of air, abbreviated as shown in bold. For gases like sulfur dioxide and ozone, this is reported as 3 different measurements, but the maps we are using use parts per 1 billion, which is abbreviated as ppb in bold. Emissions are usually communicated as tons per year or grams per second. People may confuse concentrations and emission rates. Concentrations measure the total ambient air pollution from all sources in a given area, and emissions rates reflect the amount of pollutant emitted in a period of time from a source. For example, if a smokestack is pumping out pollution, we measure that in tons per year or grams per second. It's an emissions rate because it has a time attached to it, like miles per hour. Emissions are regulated by air quality permits, and if concentrations are measuring above the allowable limit, then there has to be an effort to reduce the concentration of the pollution in that area by emitters. Since concentrations and emissions rates can be complicated, the EPA created the Air Quality Index to share pollution levels with the public. Each day, monitors record concentrations of the major pollutants at more than 1,000 locations across the country. These raw measurements are converted into separate AQI values for each pollutant: ground level ozone, particle pollution, carbon monoxide, and sulfur dioxide, using standard formulas developed by EPA. You can learn more about these formulas at the end of this presentation if interested. The highest of these AQI values is reported as the AQI value for that day. 0 to 100 is within the standard, 100 to 150 is above the standard, and considered unhealthy. 200 is considered very unhealthy, and a level of 300 is hazardous. So this translates concentrations into this color-coded scale. It's based on the standards that EPA sets. If you want to dive in deeper, this slide will introduce how air quality standards are calculated. So again, under the Clean Air Act and the amendments, we regulate the 6 air pollutants with the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, also called the NAAQS. The NAAQS exists for long averaging times and short averaging times for many pollutants. Their mathematical expression is a bit complicated. Let's focus on how 2 standards are calculated. First, let's look at ozone. It's measured as 70 parts per 1 billion, or equivalently as in this table, 0.070 parts per 1 million. The difference between parts per 1 billion and parts per 1 million is 1,000, so we move the decimal 2 places when we move from billion to million. Ozone is expressed as the annual 4th highest daily maximum, 8-hour concentration over 3 years. Using 3 years of data taken every hour, the highest 8-hour average for each of those days is calculated. That is done for all the days in the year. Then, the 4th highest average for each year is identified. Finally, take 3 years and average those, and that's the criteria. And if it's above 70, you're exceeding the...
Particulate matter, or PM, is a bit easier. Just locate the daily averages, calculate the quarterly mean, average the 4 quarterly means to get the annual mean for 3 years, and lastly, average the 3 years. If that number is above 9, then you exceed the standard. So these are some of the standards. The format changes a little bit. These are mainly based on some mathematical considerations to try to get something that is stable and based on health. But because the health studies are always happening, these standards tend to lag. In fact, EPA has just lowered the PM 2.5 annual average standard in the range of 9 micrograms as compared to where we used to be, which was 12. To put these standards into perspective, they've been working on lowering this standard for years.
To wrap up, we will go over some key points from this workshop. Air quality monitoring is part of a network. The state monitors air quality to comply with the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, or NAQS. In Detroit, most important are industrial and mobile sources of pollution that are very close to home, such as construction vehicles, heavy industry, and truck traffic. Due to race, income, and other factors, Detroit residents are more likely to be exposed to higher air pollution levels and experience health effects such as asthma. And lastly, air pollutants are measured as a concentration, which is then converted to a level, not to be confused with emission rates, which summarize the amount of a pollutant being emitted from a source in a certain amount of time. So, as you've hopefully learned in this video, air quality monitoring exists to meet these standards, and we, as community members, have access to data from these monitors and can use them to impact our work. We've created a walkthrough demo on AirNow.Gov that you can access using the link on the next slide. This site can be used to monitor pollution levels in your area. Click here for a demo on exploring air quality in your area. Thanks for watching. At a later date, in part 2 of this presentation, we will go into more detail about what air quality monitoring networks are and how they measure important pollutants in our region and in the country as a whole. It will also introduce you to other air quality monitoring websites where you can learn to get the best data for your area. CAPHE would like to acknowledge the following individuals and groups for their contributions to the creation and development of this workshop.